So with the spring winding down, I decided to make a new video series on YouTube chronicling my progression through learning a new piece of music. I've decided that this summer I'm going to start working on some new repertoire, and the first piece that I'm working on is Saudade No. 3 by Roland Dyens. This has been a piece that I've wanted to play for a really long time, and I'm finally putting in the time to work on it. This past year I've been talking to a lot of my students about practicing and about setting goals and really about trying to be aware of what you're trying to accomplish while practicing. And I figured that I would do a video series on my channel chronicling the progression of me learning a new piece of music, sort of going right from the very beginning and following it all the way through. So the first major goal that I have is that I plan to learn all of Saudade No. 3 by the end of June. And I've started this goal already. I already have one day of practicing on this piece, and at the beginning of this video you saw sort of a bare bones run through. I mean, picked up the guitar and started my practice session on this piece without warming up, and that's what you saw, for better or for worse. Today is day 2 on working on this piece. Even though it's the first video, I figured that the first day isn't really all that interesting. It's just a matter of me working on the piece completely new. Usually I'm sort of sight reading through it, and I'm kind of getting a gist of what the piece is. I'll give you a little idea of how I'm practicing and how I'm working on this piece. The first thing is that I'm spending 45 minutes a day, every day, working on this piece, and I'm splitting up my time doing 20 minutes of work on points that I already have been working on, whether they're technical or musical issues. They're just, things that I'm refining of what I've already learned. And then I'm spending another 25 minutes on learning new music and learning a new part of the piece. So for today, I entered this practice having learned up to the middle of the first page. My goal for the end of this practice session was to get to the end of this first page, which is sort of the first movement. I accomplished that first goal, being able to get through the whole thing. It's not memorized, so tomorrow my major first goal will be to try and have that first page memorized to the best of my ability. There were other sub goals, so there are some really fast licks in here that I have been working on and drilling out. And so what I've found for me is really being clear rhythmically of how I'm playing these licks, because they are just sort of groups of notes, groups of 32nd notes. And so I've marked out in the score where I'm sort of grouping my 4s as I practice along with the metronome. I drilled out some of those areas. There are 2 of them that I had to go over from the previous day of practice. So coming up is a small clip of me practicing the first lick. And I broke the first lick into 6 groups of 4-note clusters of notes, sort of thinking of them as 6 groups of 16th notes. And you're going to see a progression of me playing that lick. And I start off by trying to play it at 144, which is sort of the goal speed that I have of it. And then you're going to see my practice regimen of how I brought it up to 144. So what I found at 144 is that while I could play it, it was a little sloppy. I was missing some of the notes and things like that. And this method that I used, I found, is a very useful way of cleaning up any ambiguity in it. And I started at 100. Once I started practicing, it started at 100. Made sure that I can do each one of those 3 times in a row before I moved it up. I went from 100 to 112 to 120, 132, and then finally 144. At the very end, I played it as I would do it in the piece. There's an instruction of starting it slow and then building up the speed. And so I tried to emulate that as best as I can. Here's that clip. pretty happy with ultimately that small little 5-minute section of practice. And I think that in the actual performance, which you'll hear at the end, that it was pretty decent. I was pretty happy with it. I'm still not happy with that trill and with the thumb sweep on the chord afterwards, but that's something to work on for the next time. From there, I was really trying to make the first part that I had already worked on sort of a cohesive unit. There's lots of fermatas and lots of big drawn out held chords, and I kind of want there to be the sense of movement and the sense of progression through it. Definitely sort of this quasi-improvisatorial aspect to it, but I don't want to be holding each chord for like the same amount of time. So I really tried to work that out, and that'll be a continuing thing that I do as I'm working on the piece. Another thing that I sort of worked on was really counting the rhythms. Starting in the third line, there's actually a metronome marking given, even though the whole first page is unmeasured. There's no time signature or anything. It's just one big, long, improvised thing. He does give at the beginning of that a quarter note pulse of 44. So I spent some time counting that, working with the metronome, seeing how fast that was, and really trying to keep that in mind as I was playing. That came in especially useful when there were these long eighth note triplets as the piece progressed, keeping me in control, not trying to play them overly fast. So the plan with these videos is to post one a day, and what'll happen is that you'll get a beginning performance, which is me not having practiced the piece at all for that day, but sort of what it sounds like fresh. And then I'll talk a little bit about what the goals were for that day and include any interesting practice things that I decided to do as clips throughout the video, maybe explain it a little bit, and then go over the goals that I wanted to accomplish for that day. Then follow that up with a video performance of the whole of what I have done to that day. That's going to include newly learnt sections, so some of those sections may only be 30 minutes old or so. And then from there, come back and go over what my goals are for the next practice session. So here's the performance, which was 45 minutes after I started practicing. So here's that clip. Now, my main goals for tomorrow is to, one, have memorized the first page to the best of my ability. There's a few technical spots that I'll go over again. I'll make sure that all of the fast passages that I reviewed today, the two in the beginning on the first two lines. Make sure that I work those out. There's a passage in the middle of the piece, actually kind of towards the end, which really is up on the, over the 12th fret of the guitar. So making sure that that comes out, the slur comes out, and then I'm getting that clear, and then I'm getting really full control over that section, because that section speeds up and then sort of has a sudden pause and then a quick little flurry of notes. So making sure that that's working. Again, that section is, you're told to start off slow. I have a metronome marking for that. I'm thinking groups of 6 notes, so 6 tuplets, with the ultimate fast speed at 120. So I'll work that up in a very similar fashion that I did with the opening lick. And I'll probably include a practice video of that as I spend 5-ish minutes or so with that. There's a left hand only part, which is kind of weird. And I'll spend some time on that, just working out those things. So the plan is probably for 10 minutes or so, working out some specific licks. I might get to all of them. I might not get to all of them. We'll see how my time is used. And then 10 minutes working on just memorizing it. And then I'll spend 25 minutes working on the next part. The next section is called Dance. And this is definitely way more complicated than the beginning. Super rhythmically awkward. There are some slurs with plucked bass notes that I know I'll have to spend some time working on and things like that. So as a general sort of what I should be able to get to for tomorrow, there are 2 sections that are sort of sectioned off by repeat signs. I'll try and get both of them at least learnt tomorrow. The plan is to follow through with this to at least the end of June, when I have the whole piece learnt. And feel free to comment down below with any questions or comments or suggestions on what you would want to see in the video. If you want to see me practice a certain way, work on the piece a certain way, if you have any questions on how I approached something, feel free to ask in the comments below, and I'll either explain it in the comments, or I'll make sure to do a video, sort of a follow-up within the next video on how I practiced. The idea is that I'll probably actually include a few little tidbits or a few little sections of practice that I find are kind of interesting. So this week we had the metronome work that I did with the opening lick that for me, I noticed a big improvement with it immediately with the right hand control. And I'll sort of explain my way through that as those come up, anything that I find interesting. But if there's a specific thing that you want to ask me that I didn't cover, or you were wondering how I got from here to another point that I didn't necessarily cover in a video, again, feel free to ask in the comments. If you are new to my channel, please hit that subscribe button, hit the bell notification so that way you're notified every time I post a new video. And I'll see you guys tomorrow with the next video. Bye.